I thought I knew what fear was. Long nights on the road, pushing my body to its limits under blazing stage lights. But then I joined her tour. I heard the whispers slipping through the mic, felt the chill in the shadows stretching beneath her feet. They call it Sasha Fierce, a stage persona, an alter ego, but I know better now. I left that world behind, but her voice still echoes in my mind, crackling through the speakers, slipping through the wires, reminding me of the truth. You've heard it too. You just don't want to admit it. I've been chasing this dream for as long as I can remember, counting steps on cracked sidewalks, spinning through crowded subway cars, stretching my tired muscles in the back corners of crammed dance studios. New York City can chew you up and spit you out if you let it, but I never gave it the chance. I kept pushing, kept grinding, kept moving to the beat only I could hear. So when I landed a spot as a background dancer for the I Am Sasha Fierce tour, it felt like I'd finally cracked the code, broken through to the other side. This was it, my shot. I remember the first rehearsal like a flash of stage lights, the mirrored studio, the scent of sweat and ambition hanging in the air, the low hum of anticipation vibrating through the wooden floors. We all gathered around, stretching out hamstrings, rolling stiff necks, checking our reflections for signs of nerves. Then she walked in. Beyoncé. Even in sweats and a loose hoodie, she had a presence, a gravitational pull that shifted the air around her, bending every eye in the room to her orbit. She gave us a nod, a half smile, and then made a beeline for her mic stand in the corner. She wrapped her fingers around the mic, her nails catching the fluorescent light, and leaned in close. I couldn't hear what she said, but her lips moved quickly, urgently, like she was praying or whispering a secret to someone only she could see. The speakers crackled, the sound engineer adjusting levels, and then the beat hit. A deep, driving pulse that rattled my ribs. "All right, let's run single ladies from the top," the choreographer barked, snapping us into place. As the music swelled, I felt the room tighten, the air growing thick with heat and focus. Beyoncé's voice cut through the speakers, sharp and fierce, every word landing like a bullet. And I swear, just for a moment, her eyes caught mine in the mirror. A flicker of dark intensity, something wild and untamed. It sent a chill up my spine, but I shook it off, throwing myself into the routine. We moved as one, a sea of sweat and breath. Every step a shot of adrenaline, every spin a small victory against gravity. But even as we hit the final pose, Beyoncé holding her last note with a ferocity that seemed to crack the air, I felt it again. That chill, that pressure like the sound waves themselves were pushing me back. As the music cut, the room burst into breathless applause and scattered laughter, the tension breaking like a wave against the studio walls. Beyoncé set the mic back in its stand, her hand lingering on it for just a second too long. I shook it off, reaching for my water bottle, telling myself it was just nerves, just the thrill of dancing beside a legend. But deep down, I knew it was something more. We hit the road in early 2009, the tour buses winding through rain-soaked highways and sunlit stretches of empty desert, the wheels humming beneath our feet like the steady pulse of a drumbeat. The days blurred together, rehearsals and echoing arenas, quick stops at gas stations, stolen naps and cramped bunks. The adrenaline was a constant high, a fuel stronger than coffee burning through our veins as we tightened every routine, sharpened every step. I kept telling myself this was everything I'd ever wanted, but even then, something felt off. It started small, little things. Beyoncé whispering into her mic before sound checks, her lips moving faster than the words coming out, her fingers curled tightly around the metal, knuckles pale. She had this habit of pausing for just a second before each rehearsal, eyes closed, head bowed like a fighter stepping into the ring, whispering to her microphone as if it held some secret only she could hear. I tried to brush it off. Every artist has their rituals, right? I'd seen singers cross themselves before going on stage, watched rappers smack their chests, mutter prayers, kiss the sky. But this felt different, darker. I remember one sound check in particular, an empty arena in Chicago. The lights low, the stage stretching out into darkness. The band was already warming up, the bass line for DA, rumbling through the speakers, the vibrations trembling in my bones. Beyoncé stepped onto the stage, her hoodie pulled up, the shadow of her face obscured beneath the fabric. She reached for the mic, her fingers wrapping around it like a claw, and leaned in close. I was standing a few feet away, stretching my calves when I heard it. A whisper, sharp and low, slipping through the feedback crackle. I couldn't make out the words, but they had a jagged edge, a rhythm that felt offbeat, wrong, like a heart stuttering in a dead chest. I took a step closer, my breath catching as her voice cut through the dark. It sounded different, rougher, layered, like two voices speaking in imperfect unison. "All right, let's run it from the top," the choreographer shouted, breaking the spell. The lights blazed to life, the stage crew moving like shadows behind the beams, and the beat hit hard and fast, the kind of rhythm that rattles your teeth and makes your pulse jump. Beyoncé straightened, her head snapping up, eyes sharp, focused, and we launched into the routine. Every step was muscle memory by now. The choreography burned into our limbs, but something felt tighter, like the stage itself had drawn a breath, the air vibrating around us, thick and heavy. As we hit the chorus, Beyoncé's voice ripped through the speakers, fierce and guttural, her eyes locked on the far end of the arena, as if staring into something only she could see. For a second, I thought I saw her shadow stretch, bending away from the stage lights, moving too quickly, too fluidly, like smoke curling in reverse. By the time we hit the final pose, my heart was racing, my skin cold beneath the stage lights. Beyoncé dropped the mic back into the stand, her hand lingering for just a moment, her chest heaving. I caught her eye as she turned to leave, and in that split second, I swore I saw a flicker of something else behind her gaze, a darkness, a hunger, a twisted smile that slipped through her expression before she pulled her hood up and disappeared into the shadows backstage. I shook it off, telling myself it was just exhaustion, just the lights playing tricks on me. But as I stumbled back to my corner of the stage, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me, something that had seen me notice. The first time I tried to talk to someone about it, I got brushed off. We were crammed in the narrow hallway of a Houston arena, the walls lined with tangled cables and the echo of muffled bass lines bleeding through the concrete. I leaned against the cool wall, catching my breath after another brutal rehearsal, my muscles trembling with exhaustion. Trey, one of the other dancers, stood beside me, scrolling through his phone, the glow reflecting off his sweat-damp skin. I hesitated, my pulse already racing, the memory of that twisted, growling echo still fresh in my mind. "Yo," I said, my voice low, trying to sound casual. "You ever notice anything weird when she's on stage?" Trey glanced up, one eyebrow cocked, a smirk already forming. "Weird how? Like, how does she move like that and it feels weird?" I forced a chuckle, the sound too thin, too forced. "Nay, I mean, the way she talks to the mic, like she's whispering to it, like it's alive or something." He blinked, his smile slipping for a fraction of a second before he snorted, shaking his head. "Bro, you're just tired. We all are. She's an artist. They do weird stuff. Part of the package." I swallowed, my throat tight, my pulse pounding in my ears. "Yeah, but I swear I heard something like a second voice under hers during Ego in Atlanta." He rolled his eyes, stuffing his phone into his pocket. "Man, it's just reverb or some sound tech glitch. Trust me, the mics are always acting up. Don't let it mess with your head." He clapped me on the shoulder, his hand clammy, and then pushed off the wall, sauntering down the hallway with that loose, effortless swagger of someone who hadn't felt the chill I had, someone still untouched by the shadows creeping at the edge of the spotlight. A few nights later in Dallas, I got my next confirmation. We were on stage for a dress rehearsal, the arena dark except for the harsh, blinding overhead lights. The band hit the first notes of Sweet Dreams. the synths rolling through the speakers vibrating the stage beneath my feet. As the chorus hit, Beyoncé's voice ripped through the sound system, fierce and commanding. But beneath it, almost hidden in the mix, I heard it again. A second voice, low and guttural, each syllable jagged and raw, cutting through the music like a serrated blade. I stumbled, my foot slipping on the polished stage, my pulse spiking. Beyoncé's eyes flicked toward me, her head tilting just slightly, her lips pulling into a slow, knowing smile, and I felt the air around me thicken, the stage lights casting sharp, angular shadows that seemed to stretch just a bit too long. I forced myself back into the routine, my limbs moving on autopilot, but my mind was already racing, my heart hammering against my ribs. I knew what I'd heard, and this time I was sure it had heard me too. I tried to shake it off to bury the fear beneath muscle memory and heavy bass lines, but the feeling only grew stronger. It clung to me, thick and cold, like the sweat-soaked costumes we dragged off stage each night. We hit Los Angeles a week later, the air crisp and sharp, the kind of dry heat that cracks your lips and leaves your skin tingling. The arena there was massive, a yawning concrete beast that swallowed sound and spat it back in fractured echoes. We were halfway through rehearsals for the night, the lights blazing, the band laying down a tight groove for Diva. I took my mark, head low, rolling my shoulders loose, every nerve thrumming with the stage's familiar electric pulse. The beat dropped hard and fast, the kind that hits you right in the chest, and we launched into the routine. My body moved on instinct, each step a sharp cut through the heavy air, my limbs snapping into position without thought. Then I heard it. Beyoncé leaned into the mic, her head tilted back, her mouth stretching wide around the lyrics, her eyes half closed. And that sound slipped through the speakers again. It wasn't just her voice. It was deeper, rougher, layered beneath her words like a growl, each syllable rolling out in a twisted, guttural whisper, too fast, too sharp, like the crackle of dry bones snapping in a darkened alley. My chest tightened, my steps faltering for just a moment, my breath catching in my throat. She turned, eyes locking onto mine, her head tilting slightly, that same slow, knowing smile creeping across her lips. Her teeth caught the spotlight, glinting like the edge of a blade, and I felt my pulse hammer against my ribs, my hands slick with cold sweat. I forced myself back into the routine, my limbs heavy, my mind spinning, my breath coming in shallow, ragged gasps. The song ended with a final crashing chord, the stage lights flaring to a blinding white, and I stumbled back, nearly tripping over a loose cable, my pulse roaring in my ears. She set the mic back into its stand, her hand lingering for a second, her head tilted as if listening to something only she could hear. The band fell silent, the echoes of the final notes still vibrating in the air, the stage lights flickering, the shadows stretching long and thin against the concrete walls. I took a shaky breath, my heart still racing, my skin cold beneath the blazing stage lights. I knew what I'd heard, and for the first time, I felt like it had seen me too. I was alone on the bus that night, the others off exploring the city, the empty bunks swaying gently as the engine idled. The air felt too thick, the darkness pressing in from every corner, every creak of the metal frame making my pulse jump. I needed a reminder of home, something to pull me back from the edge. I pulled out my phone, my thumb hovering over my sister's name for a moment before I tapped it, the familiar ring echoing through the cramped space. "Hey, stranger," she answered, her voice crackling through the line, warm and familiar. A lifeline. "Forgot you had a family, huh?" I let out a shaky laugh, the tension in my chest easing a little. "Yeah, sorry, it's just crazy out here." "Crazy good, right? I saw the clips online. You're killing it." I leaned back against my bunk, the thin mattress creaking beneath me, my muscles still buzzing from the show. Yeah, I guess." She hesitated, the line buzzing with faint static, a low hum building in the background like distant thunder. "You don't sound sure." I frowned, adjusting my grip on the phone, the cracked edge biting into my palm. "It's just weird out here, you know? The schedule, the crowds. It's intense." There was a pause, the static thickening, the sound deepening like a slow, steady drumbeat, something ancient echoing through the line. "You ever feel scared out there?" she asked, her voice slipping, the warmth fading, her tone stretching into something colder, something that raised the tiny hairs on the back of my neck. "Scared?" I repeated, my pulse quickening. "Of what?" Another pause, the static crackling, the line humming like a struck tuning fork, the vibration settling into my bones. "You know," she said slowly, her words dragging like the pull of a heavy, rusted chain, each syllable grinding, "of what's watching you, of what's whispering to you when the stage lights cut out, of the thing that waits behind the music in the darkness between the notes." My blood ran cold, my fingers tightening around the phone, the plastic creaking beneath my grip. "What are you talking about?" "The one who hides in the shadows," the voice whispered. Rougher now, layered, slipping into a lower register, each word vibrating through the thin speaker. "The one with a grin like a wound, eyes like burning coals, breath like smoke, and old dead things." I yanked the phone away from my ear, my thumb shaking over the end call button, my pulse roaring in my ears. And then, as if sensing my fear, the voice crackled back, softer, my sister's tone again, warm, concerned, human. "Take care of yourself, okay?" it said, slipping back into her familiar cadence, the warmth dripping back into its tone like a mask pulled over a skull. "Don't lose yourself out there." The line went dead, the screen dimming, my reflection staring back at me, wide-eyed and pale, my pulse still racing. I dropped the phone onto the mattress, my hand trembling, my mind spinning. I sat there for a long time, the low hum of the idling engine vibrating through my bones, the shadows around me seeming to stretch, to lean in, to listen. When the sun finally bled through the narrow slats of the window, I stumbled out of my bunk, my limbs heavy, my mind fogged with exhaustion. I had to get this out of my head to clear the shadows that had crept in behind my eyes, whispering in the corners of my mind. I needed to talk to her. We were in New Orleans, the arena a towering concrete cavern, its echoes sharp and endless. I slipped in early, my sneakers squeaking against the polished floor, the overhead light still dim, casting long thin shadows across the rows of empty seats. The stage loomed ahead, a dark skeletal outline against the backdrop of the massive arena, the metal scaffolding stretching up like the ribs of a long dead beast. As I approached, I realized the stage wasn't empty. The mic stood alone in the center, its stand tilted slightly, the metal gleaming in the half-light, the thick, coiled cable snaking down to the floor like a vein pulsing against the concrete. I felt my pulse quicken, my breath coming in shallow, uneven gasps. I stepped closer, my shoes scuffing against the stage, each step echoing back at me, sharp and hollow. I hesitated at the edge, my reflection flickering in the darkened screen of a nearby amp, my eyes too wide, my skin too pale. I glanced around, but the arena was empty, the shadows stretching long and thin, the air thick and still. I reached out, my hand trembling, the distance between my fingertips and the mic suddenly feeling vast, like I was reaching across a chasm. I leaned in, my ear almost touching the cold, polished metal, my pulse roaring in my ears. Silence. Nothing but the soft electric hum of the overhead lights, the distant thrum of a bass line bleeding through the walls from a sound check in another part of the arena. I let out a shaky breath, my chest loosening, my heart slowing. I straightened, pulling back, my hand still tingling from the cold metallic brush of the mic stand. And then, from the far side of the stage, I heard it, her voice. "If I were a boy." I turned, my pulse spiking, my breath catching in my throat. She stood in the shadows, one foot on the edge of the stage, her head tilted, her eyes locked on mine, the long, loose waves of her hair catching the dim light. Her lips curled into a slow, creeping smile. She stepped forward, her bare feet whispering against the stage, her voice slipping through the empty arena, each note sharp, cutting, her gaze never breaking from mine. Even just for a day. The words echoed around me, her voice rolling through the empty seats, vibrating through the metal scaffolding, the mic behind me, humming, crackling, alive. I stumbled back, my pulse thundering in my ears, my skin cold, my breath coming in shallow, ragged gasps. Beyoncé stopped at the edge of the shadows, her head tilting, her smile stretching too wide, her eyes too bright, too sharp. "You came to hear it, didn't you?" she whispered, her voice low, slipping between the syllables of the song, each word dripping with something darker, something ancient. My vessel. I felt my blood run cold, my limbs heavy, the stage suddenly too small, the shadows too close, too hungry. "The mic," she continued, her teeth catching the faint light, her breath fogging in the cool air. "It carries my voice, holds my power, whispers my truth." She stepped closer, her bare feet leaving no sound, no trace, the shadows around her curling, bending, stretching to follow her every move. "It is my vessel," she said, her voice slipping into a lower register. Each word vibrating through the stage, the mic behind me crackling, hissing, whispering. I stumbled back, my foot catching on a loose cable, my pulse roaring, my breath coming in short, shallow bursts. She smiled, her eyes never leaving mine, the darkness stretching behind her like wings. "And now," she whispered, her lips barely moving, her voice slipping through the air like smoke. "It's yours too." I left the tour 2 weeks later. I told them it was burnout, that my body couldn't take the grind anymore, that I needed to find my balance, to breathe again. They nodded, clapped me on the shoulder, wished me luck. No one asked what I'd seen, what I'd heard, why my hands shook when I reached for a mic, why I flinched at every sharp crackle of the speakers. I never danced again. I slipped back into the ordinary world, my body stiff, my mind fractured, the beats still pulsing behind my eyes, the whispers still echoing in my skull. I tried to forget to bury it beneath the thrum of city traffic, the distant shouts of street vendors, the hum of fluorescent lights. But I still see her. Every time I scroll through my feed, every time a clip pops up, her shadow flickers at the edge of the frame, the darkness bending around her, the crowd screams blurring into something darker, something older, something hungry. I watch her videos, my breath shallow, my pulse slow, my mind buzzing with the truth I can't shake. She calls it Sasha Fierce, an alter ego, a stage persona, a mask. That's what they tell you. That's what she wants you to believe. But I know better now. I've heard the whispers, felt the cold press of its breath against my ear, the low, guttural rumble that twists beneath her words, the ancient scraping syllables that crackle through the speakers, slipping through the wires, vibrating through the air. It's not just a name. It's a presence, a spirit, something that crawls through the cables, whispers through the microphones, echoes in the darkness behind the stage lights. And you praise it. You raise your hand, scream her name, pulse to the beat, your breath catching as she spins, as she snarls, as her shadow stretches, flickers, slips through the light. You don't see it, but you feel it, don't you? The chill in your veins, the tightening of your chest, the shiver that slides down your spine when her eyes lock with the camera. When her voice cuts through the crowd, sharp and fierce and otherworldly. You've heard it too. You just don't want to admit it. So, go ahead, hit play, watch the lights flare, feel the bass vibrate through your bones, let the shadows flicker at the corners of your screen. But remember, you're not just listening, you're praising.